Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello, thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be using the Happy Haunting stamp set again. I just had to color in this little cat and the witch. And so I'm making another Halloween card that turned out to be my favorite so far of 2017. I'm stamping them out on some neenah 110-pound cardstock. I'm going to be coloring them in with some Copic markers and some Prismacolor pencils. I chose to use the 110-pound as opposed to the 80-pound because parts of these images are very narrow. When I tried it with my 80-pound cardstock, I would get a lot of bleeding over the lines. And so the 110-pound cardstock just helps to hold everything in a little bit more. It allows the alcohol to soak into the paper without bleeding out. I'm using my favorite black ink to stamp these images. It's Simon Says Stamp Intense Black Ink. And then I will leave my stamps in the Mini Misty so that I can re-ink them again after I'm done with the coloring. When you color with Prismacolor pencils, it can dull your black lines. You can go over them again with a black pen, or if you have a stamp positioner, it's just easier to restamp them this way. Again, I'll leave my marker caps at the side so that you can see the colors that I'm using. I wanted to show you this fabulous new tool that I just picked up. It's the Boss Stitch Quiet Sharp 6. It's really massive, and it does take up a lot of room on my craft table, but I believe it is totally worth it. I love this thing because it sharpens my pencils to a long, really sharp tip. I was having a lot of trouble with breakage with my little Prismacolor manual sharpener. Sandy Allnock recommended this sharpener, and I agree with her. It's totally worth it. So back to my coloring. I'm using dark umber to put down a base color for her hair, and then I go over it with a yellow ochre just to add a little more warmth. I'm making sure to go over it several times so I have a lot of pigment on the paper because I'm going to go over it with my odorless mineral spirits. If you don't put enough pigment down, when you go over it with the odorless mineral spirits, it can leave speckles behind. So the Gamsol will serve to smoothen out my coloring and to brighten it up a little bit. So I'll leave you with the coloring now. I'm going to turn on some music and I'll catch back up with you after it's done. Now for my very favorite part on this whole card. It's creating her cute curly hair. And I'm using a colored pencil called Espresso. It's a bit darker than the dark umber that I used for the base color. And I'm just drawing in some texture. As I mentioned before, I'm going to restamp these images, so I'm just putting my coloring panel back into my Mini Misty. I'm using the same Simon Says Stamp Intense black ink, and this just crisps up the lines again. Next, I'm going to fussy cut these images, and I do this off camera because it takes me a really long time. I'm not that great at it, but I wanted to be able to pop them up on the front of my card. I don't have any window dies, so I just created a very simple window panel using my silhouette machine and some black cardstock. This is going to be a shaker card, so my next step is to create the panel that will go behind the window, and I'm going to do a bit of distress ink blending for this. The colors I'm using are Dusty Concord, Seedless Preserve, and Mustard Seed. I also created a candy corn shape on my computer and used the silhouette to cut them out. I'm leaving the candy corns on the cutting mat so it kind of holds them in place so that I can quickly color them. And I'm not being careful to stay within the lines because they're just going to pop out when I'm done. After I cut these out, I decided I needed a few more, so I went ahead and cut out another set of these. I'm adding some score tape around the windows. This is a really strong tape, and then I can put down the acetate. I find it easier to use score tape than the multimedia matte glue. When I do this, the glue always seems to ooze out onto the acetate. Once I put down this acetate, I just trim it down to size. My next step is to create a little well, and I'm using some foam tape, and I'm just putting it on the whole back of this window part of my card. I'm going to be adding 2 layers of this foam tape so that the candy corns have plenty of room to shake and move around. Also, I thought I should mention that when I pulled my little candy corn off of my cutting mat, they were kind of sticky. They kept some of the residue from the cutting mat. So how I got around that was I just used some anti-static powder on them, and it took the stickiness right off. And of course, you can use pretty Halloween colored sequins in this if you don't want to do the candy corns. I'm using one of the cute sentiments that came in this set, and it says Happy Haunting. I'm going to heat emboss this with some white embossing powder, so I put my anti-static powder down first, and then I'm inking up my sentiment with some Versamark ink. This is a very sticky ink. It'll hold onto the embossing powder really well. So I pour that over it, and then I just kind of flick off the excess. I made sure to heat up my heat tool for at least a minute so it's good and hot before I bring it to my cardstock. This helps prevent the paper from warping too badly. You can still see the anti-static powder on this cardstock, but it wipes off very well with a clean rag or a tissue. I decide to cut out this sentiment pretty closely to the letters. So I go back and forth using my paper trimmer and my scissors. After all that work, I really could have just used my scissors because I do end up cutting it down pretty small. Now I'm going to start adhering my little images to the front of my card panel. And I'm just using some dot adhesive for the bigger images. For their little trick-or-treating bags, I do use some multimedia matte because they are so small. After I had completed this card, my little son saw this on my craft table and he just fell in love with it. So I think I'm going to be giving this to him for Halloween. I hope you all are finding some time to sit down and make up some fun Halloween cards this year. So here is my completed card, and I've got to give it a shake to show you how cute the candy corns look behind the windows. I was having so much fun with it that I forgot to put it on an actual card base. So here's me doing that, and it's just a regular A2 size card, which is 5.5 by 4.25. And I'm using some more dry adhesive for that. Please like, subscribe, and share this video on your favorite social media. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. And happy early Halloween to all of you. Bye!